Right now, something inside you is reading the room you're in, the temperature of your skin, the tension in your shoulders, and the meaning of every word on this screen. And you have no idea it's happening. You think you're in charge of your life. You're not. The version of you that decides, plans, and worries handles about 50 bits of information every second. The other you, the silent operator running the show, handles 11 million. By the time this script ends, you'll understand which one has been writing your story. Let that ratio settle for a moment. 50 against 11 million. The conscious mind, the one you call I, is a narrow flashlight in a stadium-sized darkness. Everything outside that beam still exists, still moves, still decides. Researchers in cognitive neuroscience and information theory, Tor Noratrandas, made this famous in the user illusion, have been pointing at this gap for decades. The numbers shift depending on how you measure, but the order of magnitude holds. Your awareness is a rounding error compared to what's actually running. So who's running it? The part of you the mystics called the deeper self. Neville Goddard called it your awareness of being. The Kybalion called it the all within. Modern psychology, less poetically, calls it the subconscious. Different vocabulary, same operator. The one that beats your heart while you argue with a stranger online. The one that recognizes a face in a crowd before your conscious mind names it. The one that holds every assumption you've ever made about who you are. And here's where the spiritual law begins to bite. If the conscious mind processes 50 bits, but the subconscious processes 11 million, then whatever the subconscious believes is the version of reality your life is being built around. The assumptions you carry quietly, not the affirmations you whisper. You can spend an hour repeating, "I am abundant," and undo it in a single afternoon of quiet, unconscious thoughts about lack. Why? Because the affirmation runs on 50 bits. The assumption runs on 11 million. Guess which one shapes the outcome? This is what every contemplative tradition has been pointing at when they talk about the inner state. The substrate underneath the thinking. The texture of being beneath the surface mood. Goddard called it the state akin to sleep. That drowsy, half-awake place where the chatter of the conscious mind quiets and the deeper layer becomes reachable. Why does it have to quiet? Because as long as 50 bits is shouting, 11 million can't hear you. Picture a radio station. The subconscious is the broadcaster. The conscious mind is the studio engineer. The engineer thinks he's running the show. He just adjusts the levels of whatever the broadcaster sends through. If the broadcaster is sending out a frequency that says, "I am someone who struggles," the engineer can dress it up, smooth it, polish it, and the world still receives struggle every single time. So how does the broadcaster decide what to send? Repetition, emotion, imagery, felt as real. Those are the three doors. The subconscious doesn't speak the language of argument, it speaks the language of impression. Think about how you actually learned to fear something as a child. Nobody handed you a dissertation on why dogs are dangerous. Something happened, your body reacted, an impression locked in. 11 million bits per second wrote that file. Years later, your conscious mind tries to reason its way out of the fear and gets nowhere. 50 bits cannot rewrite what 11 million bits installed. But the same mechanism works in reverse. The same channel that wrote the limitation can write the freedom. This is the part most people miss. The subconscious is a perfectly obedient servant that's been listening to whatever you've handed it for 30, 40, 50 years. Most of what it's been given was scraps, stray thoughts, inherited fears, comments from people who didn't know they were programming you. So here's the work. And it is work. Anyone selling you a shortcut is selling you nothing. The work is mental diet. The relentless, daily curation of what you allow 11 million bits per second to absorb. The conversations you stay in, the internal monologue you tolerate, the images you replay before sleep, the feeling tone you walk around inside of. Most people audit their bank account every week and never audit the inner room they've been living in for decades. Then they wonder why the outer life keeps mirroring back the same scene. Try this tonight, just before you fall asleep, that drowsy threshold Goddard pointed at. Choose one short scene, a scene that implies your wish is already fulfilled. An ordinary moment that could only exist if the thing were already true. The handshake, the text message, the keys in your hand. Feel it from the inside. Feel the relief of finally, then drift. You're depositing, not affirming. 50 bits of conscious intention, repeated nightly, slipping through the open door of sleep into the layer that processes 11 million. That's how the broadcaster gets new material to work with. You might ask, and you should ask, if the subconscious is so powerful, why doesn't everyone manifest constantly by accident? They do. That's the uncomfortable answer. Look around. Every life is a perfect manifestation of someone's dominant inner state, the job you hate, the relationship you keep recreating, the body you keep apologizing to. All of it is faithful. The subconscious is incapable of betrayal. It produces with mathematical precision the externalized version of whatever it has been allowed to assume. This is the part that stings, because it removes the comfort of being a victim of circumstance. If your life is the broadcast of your inner state, the broadcast can be changed, which means the life can be changed, which means the only person standing between you and a different outcome is the one still insisting the current outcome was done to them. A skeptical voice might rise here. If I really believed differently, the world would still push back. Reality is heavier than thought. That objection deserves respect. Reality does have momentum. Old structures don't dissolve the moment a new assumption forms. The bills still arrive, the body still aches, the patterns still test you. But the same bills mean two completely different things, to two different inner states. One person inside lack feels suffocated. Another, inside the assumption of provision, feels temporarily inconvenienced on the way to inevitability. Same scene, different broadcast, different result eventually. Eventually is the word the impatient mind wants to skip. 11 million bits per second is a vast field. It doesn't turn on a dime. The subconscious changes the way a continent changes, slowly, then all at once. Your job is to be consistent enough that the new assumption becomes the dominant signal. The conscious mind's role is to refuse, gently and repeatedly, to keep handing the broadcaster old material. That refusal is the discipline. When the familiar thought returns, and it will, dressed in your own voice, sounding reasonable, you simply don't feed it. You return to the scene. You return to the assumption, quietly, without drama. Like a parent gently redirecting a child for the 100th time, the Kybalion put it in one line that still hasn't been improved on. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Whatever that means cosmologically, it means something practical inside you. The world you walk through is the world your dominant inner state has agreed to perceive. Change the agreement and the perceived world shifts to match. Inevitably. Here's the human moment. You already know this. You felt it. There was a day, maybe a week, maybe a season when something inside you shifted and suddenly opportunities you'd been blind to were everywhere. The world hadn't changed. You had. The broadcast had quietly retuned, and 11 million bits per second started picking up signals your old self had filtered out for years. You called it luck. It was filtration. The implication is heavier than it sounds. If your inner state is filtering 11 million bits of incoming information every second, then most of what you call reality is actually selection. Out of the infinite noise pouring in, the subconscious chooses what reaches you based on what you've trained it to look for. A person who assumes the world is hostile finds proof in every glance. A person who assumes the world is conspiring on their behalf finds proof in the same glance. Both are seeing what their broadcaster told them to see. So the question is no longer whether your inner world creates your outer one. The question is what you're going to do with that fact tonight, tomorrow morning. The next time the old assumption rises up, where in your voice will you feed it again out of habit, or will you finally, deliberately hand the broadcaster something different? Because the 11 million bits don't take a day off. They will work for you or against you, but they will never stop working. There is no neutral. There is no pause. Every second of your inner life is being recorded, weighted, and broadcast back at you as the world you call yours. The flashlight you call I is small. Make peace with that. But the flashlight chooses where to point, and what it points at long enough, the 11 million quietly accept as true. That is the law underneath every spiritual teaching that ever survived a century, because it's how the instrument is built. Your awareness is the seed, your assumption is the soil. The harvest is already on its way. The only question left is what you planted today. The broadcaster is on the air. It has always been on the air. Decide what it says next.